Hey there, Timow here. Can you believe we're nearly at the end of this 5-part reflection series? Let's talk about the wild ride that started this decade, the 2020s. You know, those first 2 years that has started saying, oh goodness. So imagine, you're at your office hangout, chatting by the watercolor before March 2020. Spears speak of Brexit, big shots passing away, a major TV station closing down, rumors of global showdowns, natural explosions, and that dreaded R word, recession, with that strange infrared yield curve thing. Crazy, right? And then, bam! COVID-19 happened. Suddenly, it's all about stay at home, stay safe vibes. You're working from home while scientists work like superheroes to create the vaccine. You'd think that being stuck with family or staying at home would be a relief, right? Nope. Worries don't go away like that. This was the start of the FUD era, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. FUD originally stood for deceptive marketing tactic that spreads negative or misleading information about something, be it a product, service, technology, or anything. But I took it literally, word for word, and twisted it into a powerful technique. Before I go any further, remember to subscribe and hit the bell for future content. The literal FUD analysis is a fancy way of comparing how people expect things to go versus how they actually turn out in situations that make us nervous. It's like a small tool to help us understand how fear, uncertainty, and doubt manifest themselves in real life. Consider it as a simple 4x3 table, with the top left deliberately empty. The top columns are labeled fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and the side rows are labeled expectations and reality. Now let's break it down. Expectation, this is where you write down what you believe will happen in a given situation. Reality, here's where you record what really happened. Fear, in this column, you record your fears before the situation. Uncertainty, this is where you lay out your concerns before diving into the situation. It's comparable to the gray areas of your expectations. Doubt, finally, you write down any reservations you had before the event. These are the nagging thoughts that cast a pall over your plans. First, you write down your expectations and categorize them as fear, uncertainty, or doubt. Then you write down the observations, the actual ones, and categorize them according to the appropriate columns. The LFUD analysis matrix allows you to compare your initial fears, uncertainties, and doubts to actual reality of the situation. It's an interesting way to consider how our fears and uncertainties may or may not correspond to what really happens in the end. Now, it's time for its application. I'll start using the LFUD analysis matrix with an easy one, the COVID-19 pandemic. So what's the fear? People were afraid of catching the virus, especially with constant mutations. There's also concern about curfews and harsh lockdown measures. What's happening now? The mask mandates are lifted and it became a voluntary option, with the exception of hospitals. Everything went back to normal, including socializations. And they are more prepared to arrange remote work or online classes. Uncertainty. We had no idea when this pandemic would be resolved or it would become an endemic. So what's happening now? The number of active COVID cases in the country is clearly less than half of its peak. When the total number of COVID cases in the country exceeded the asymptote or the predicted limit at the near end of 2022, it meant that the disease had become an endemic. Doubt. People were skeptical of the vaccines purchased by our government, especially those from a country favored by the previous administration. These vaccines were reportedly ineffective compared to those developed in Western countries. So what happened now? The majority of the population received the initial doses of the COVID vaccine, but they are less than the required threshold of herd immunity. Vaccines are thrown away because people are hesitant to use them and or are exhausted by the pandemic, which is later when the emergencies are lifted. Now let's get into the complex form. Let's tackle about the media industry, particularly in the broadcast shutdown of a leading broadcaster. The fear. During those 2 years, I could feel the fear in the air as I wrote those first blog entries. People were concerned about losing their access to both entertainment and information. This was due to the powerful figure from the South, fueled by fragile ego, attempting to shape their narrative and impose their own beliefs. Their goal was to eliminate any mention of it and advance their agenda by claiming to make Philippine television great again. But the outcome, their replacement, All TV, failed due to poor prioritization and misdirection. Number 2, as a result of the impending shutdown, GMA would become a virtual monopoly, imposing the visibility of their stars, encouraging viewers to join because they are, quote, law-abiding, unquote, and financially stable and building aggressively on various platforms. The outcome, their dominance and long-standing culture of self-promotion were true. Even advertisements to persuade disgruntled former linear TV viewers who are now using smartphones or smart TV. 3. While streaming platforms like Netflix grew exponentially, the shutdown would result in a delayed and ineffective transition to digital TV in the country. Outcome, this is true. In terms of demographics, viewers belonging to Generation Z and or residing in Mindanao increasingly favored streaming over traditional linear television on the first quarter of 2023. The uncertainty. Number 1. The fall of a major player created opportunities and broadened horizons for other media companies to capitalize the industry's recovery and the dawn of a new era. Because of the contrasting work environment, actors and behind-the-scenes crew are initially hesitant to join GMA despite the financial security it provides. As a result, they pursued opportunities at TV5 and elsewhere, or took a couple of years before transitioning and giving in. The outcomes. Since becoming a Kapuso since 2021, only one ex-Ignacio talent has had more projects than anyone else, Beauty Gonzalez. Net25 casted prominent Kapuso figures such as Pia Guanyo, Tony Petgaba, and Love Anyober, who were absent during the pandemic period. Maha Salvador, now Mrs. Rambo Nunez, established herself as a multifaceted personality outside of Ignacia by appearing on 2 networks, TV5 and GMA. In addition, she founded Crown Artist Management. Pokwang did the same, but she did not join CAM. Corina Sanchez can now be seen on TV5 and Net25 now. Alex Calleja and Jano Gibbs did the same, but in reverse order, and the 2 are now on TV5 or in the Signal TV. Okay, number 2, our digital terrestrial television transition, originally set to conclude by year-end, would experience significant delays due to the shutdown. Result? Indeed it had. The deadline has been pushed back anew, as our neighboring Southeast Asian countries have successfully completed theirs. Indonesia is for one. Now for the doubt. Number 1. Ignacio Sports Crew had to disband because they have no more capabilities to cover the games as before, not to mention the enraging pandemic disrupting the general scene. This forced the UAAP, PBL, and NCAA to find a new home. COVID disrupted the NPBL playoffs, resulting in a long-year pause, and switched to a different channel to conclude the event. It's not surprising that these leagues sought refuge with TV5, but, that aside, in November 2020, the NCAA partnered with GMA. This move stirred outrage from Ignacio loyalists. Some reasonable critics and casual viewers even demanded that GMA's sister channel to be remain, which it did. There were concerns about the new partnership's success. The outcome, contrary to the doubts, the partnership thrived. When the received IATF approval came in March 2022, they outperformed the UAAP in terms of TV airtime and reach. As they also embraced free YouTube streaming, it helped them gain massive popularity. Regarding digital terrestrial television, questions remained about the success of other channels when they learned from the mistakes of Ignacia. Outcome? Kamaning mostly adopted Ignacia's TDT strategy, include by introducing their own receivers, the GMA border box, and channels. But to avoid problems, Kamaning chose not to encrypt those channels, unlike their former rival. However, they are now faced with the challenge of simultaneously simulcasting identical content. Now let's get personal with my LFUD analysis. The fear. I used to be afraid that if I expressed my true feelings while quietly withdrawing from some groups, I'd lose friends. I was worried that those trolls and ardent supporters, whether we're into politics or a part of a specific organization, would come after me and expose my comments as screenshots for all to see. I can't help but cringe when I think about how I used to act. But guess what? I stood firm for what was important to me, even if the topics were divisive and unlikely to please the masses. So where do I stand now? I moved on from all of that. I took the good, learned from the bad, and adapted my approach as the seasons of life changed. Uncertainty. As the new decade began, I promised myself that I would carve my own path, even if it meant burning a few bridges, sort of like saying, ay walang pakikisama yan. Don't get me wrong here. That pakikisama culture has its moments, and it's pretty cool when it helps bring to light issues on which we all agree. But it's not so cool when it causes long-term harm to society. Plus, I'm approaching my 30s, and with the political landscape as it is, those powerful families that ruling solid north and south like a ping pong match, finding a long-term and respected career is becoming even more important. So here's the reality check. I'm still trying to figure all this out, especially that last part. Doubt. When the whole pandemic craziness hit, I found myself thinking, can I really handle going solo when stuff gets back to normal? And now here I am thinking, what's the deal? But you know what? Turns out most of those worries I had were mostly overblown. They didn't let me down, not one bit. Who cares if I end up losing some friends thanks to this whole cancel culture thing? As long as the friends I keep are top notch and stand by solid principles, that's what matters to me. The final installment of this year-long reflection series, which looks at the 2022-23 period, will be released on December 14th, our 10th anniversary. Keep an eye out for it, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you next time.